Hey guys, welcome to the Wild Bit Show. I'm Meghna,
And I'm Upamanyu.
and we have got a great show planned for you. We have a guest coming today who's going to be talking about her really amazing research about shapes and how chickens or baby chicks identify them. So please keep tuned in for that. In addition, we're obviously going to be talking about all the news in the wildlife world. So we're going to be covering how improper waste management might be negatively impacting the leatherback sea turtle populations. We're going to see how that's happening. And we're also going to be seeing how Russia's war might be pushing the Black Sea and its dolphins past tipping point. Obviously, now we have a lot more wars and more impact on land and wildlife, but this one concentrates on the Russian war. What else do we have on the roster groups?
Definitely, we have uh, a brief coverage on Birutė Galdikas, who was a very renowned figure in the conservation world. She was for orangutans, what Jane Goodall was for lowland gorillas. We're going to be covering that bit. There is also sort of a DNA conservation angle that has been going on for such a long time, but there has been a significant story and a commission of a freezer that could help this cause, the DNA saving cause. Um, we are going to be talking about that. Then there was another story about dogs that I kind of wanted to talk about. It's a shorter story, but we will speak about that as well. Along with that, as usual, we'll have our more shorter stories as well as some species updates or any other interesting news from the wildlife world.
Okay, so the Costa Rica story. Um, Basically, this is how land usage can also impact something in the ocean. So the story goes on to say compost, raccoons, and sea turtle predation in Costa Rica. It is an article by Manga Bay. It says a new study in Costa Rica's Guanacaste province reveals improperly disposed organic waste negatively impacts leatherback sea turtle populations. Researchers found increased urbanization led to inadequate waste management, attracting raccoons. These raccoons, drawn by readily available food scraps, subsequently preyed on turtle eggs in Las Bolas Marine National Park, a critical nesting site. Raccoons accounted for 91% of nest predators and 84% of trash feeders, demonstrating a direct link between waste and turtle nest raiding. While composting is beneficial, simply discarding organic waste creates ecological problems. This threatens Costa Rica's ecotourism industry reliant on healthy turtle populations and challenges the nation's green brand. The study highlights the need for improved waste infrastructure alongside urbanization. And the thing is, I think everyone knows that raccoons always go through waste. You would always see them, um, uh, foraging through it, and there are actually games made on it. So there's a game called Trash Pandas, and that's actually based on raccoons and their ability to like gain food from the trash. So they're kind of always painted for that, and in this case it's more our way of how we dispose the waste than actually the raccoons playing a part in it. I mean, if there's already food available and it's not covered and it's accessible, then the raccoons would go for it. And sadly, that is leading to turtle nest rain. I mean, the turtle nests are at the same place in that same marine national park, and they're being preyed on together along with in all the other organic waste that there is there.
Um, there is a problem. I think many many places around the world, at least in India, a lot of places try to compost these things, bury the things underground. I don't know, because composting is seen as this nature friendly thing, right?
Yeah,
So, but I don't know, how do we get out of that, or what would be a greener way?
I think the greener way would be like, even if you have compost pits, like you could
Huh.
have like maybe like a grill like a metallic grill or some other kind of grill, where the compost can breathe, like it can still keep becoming the fertilizer that it has to become, but not at the cost of like animals playing into it. Because even here in compost pits, if they're not too deep, then there would be like cows and other animals that actually come to eat it. So any kind of waste that you would leave around, even if it's organic, it would lead to animals coming. So there are these. I think you remember we did one of these stories. It was one of our starting stories. I think there was one where animals from the jungle were coming to these roadside eateries, which were at the fringes, and they were going through the dustbins and the waste. The elephants. The elephants were coming
Hmm.
and eating all the food, and that was because of improper waste management. Because there was no proper like there were no locked dustbins. There was nothing that was stopping the elephants from coming and raiding the dustbins there. So it's similar with the
Hmm.
raccoons, I think. So if you have a compost pit, there has to be some way that the compost pit is not just accessible to any and all animals. Then that would and the fact is that the compost pits are somewhere or wherever the waste is being discarded, it's very close to these turtle nesting sites or the marine national park, which is why it's like an overlap. So these nesting sites and the waste that is there is like an overlap, and it's leading to the nests also being raided only because there is waste there. So the turtles, I mean, the raccoons don't come just for the eggs; they come primarily because we're throwing something there.
I'm just thinking like it would be, because then the management will have to go to the local government or the municipal government or the city government, or whatever else there is. Because if we are talking about like putting wire meshes or any kind of deterrents in in place of just an open pit, that would mean that some kind of management and some kind of money has to come in, basically. So I'm basically saying that the money has to come in, and the money has to come from somewhere. So someone has to not guard the money, but someone has to be the guardian of that whole process, or the owner of that whole process. You know, where a pit is dug and all those different things. So that, in my view, introduces a lot of complexity in the chain, where composting is seen as this nature friend. The way composting is marketed to me at least, and in the popular media, is that this is a low cost or no cost alternative, which is greener and good for the environment. So that viewpoint has to be remarketed, I think, somehow, that to say that, okay, now government is coming in, and I don't know if the government will be interested to
I mean,
manage,
the
because
government.
these pits are managed mostly by locals, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think, see, if there's a pit, then it has to be local by the managed. It has to be managed by the local. Sorry,
Hmm.
but I think in a lot of like it says in the article that people also have a habit of just like having the peels and throwing it in their backyards, and they would
Hmm.
see like possums come and pick up the peels, and they never thought, oh wow, like that could have an impact on the possum's diet or anything else. It's only in this study, this researcher, the PhD student is Menendez Pelayo. The researcher found out that I mean, when he was younger, even he used to throw these scraps, and he never thought too much of it. But when this is coming very close to the national park and it's in a place with the turtle eggs, then the government will step in, because it says that Costa Rica actually does depend on the tourism by its healthy turtle population. Like that's one of its USPs. So that is how they drive people to come to Costa Rica, that they have such a big healthy turtle population. So if the government doesn't step in, it's going to be tough for the government, because a part of its revenue is going to be hit. So I think the study was important because maybe till now the government wasn't unaware, the government was unaware, or the public was also unaware. Maybe post the study, there will be awareness campaigns, and the government might step in. There might be better enclosures for compost. So there is, like we're not like what would you say, compromising on the compost bit, but we're also not letting the raccoons come in.
Yeah. In saying that, the the bottom line is there has to be some kind of government involvement. There has to be some kind of management from the the government side, which I think which is the part that bothers me, not bothers me, but worries me, that there how much interest the government will take. I don't know if there is another solution. Maybe the person who is working on it or the researcher might be able to tell us. But yeah, there might be a better solution than just having to get the government involved. Maybe something could be done at the local level. Um, but this is a
Yeah,
problem, definitely.
yeah, and I think it's also talking about rapid urbanization and its increase in waste. So it's like a tie where I think very close to this marine national park, there on land, obviously there is a lot of development that has been allowed or is happening at a rapid pace, and because of that development there are more people. More people means more waste is produced, and more waste means there is more food for the raccoons to come and raid. But I think all of these areas probably that are just near the ocean and are near this marine park or near this beach where the turtles are nesting, those areas need to be like carefully monitored, and those areas need to be carefully then the composting has to be done in a very, like what we say, in a very structured manner, so that the raccoons cannot get through in it, because the turtles are very important. And turtles, if people didn't know, have like a 1 in 1,000 or 1 in 800 survival chance, which means that when there are 800 to 1,000 eggs that are on the beach, and once they hatch, and they go into the ocean, or they don't even go into the ocean because sometimes they're just like eaten on the beaches by dogs or vultures. Hmm? Mike, okay. So dogs or vultures, and then if you once the turtles enter the water as well, so they're really tiny. Have you seen like hatchlings? They're super tiny. So that time they can be predated by bigger fish as well. So that is why turtles have like a really, really, really small chance of survival, which is why there's so many eggs laid by a turtle. They do say a female turtle can lay up to 500 eggs in one season. And I mean, we still don't know if one of those 500 eggs would actually make it to being an adult turtle, which is why it's more important to save these nests and make sure that the predation is not happening on these nests, so
Hmm.
that we can save the turtles. But the other way we can do this also is, that there's more monitoring of the nests. Like there's either the nests are secured, because there are places in India where, like, what they would do is that as soon as a turtle lays eggs, and there would be like a turtle survey by the beach, the nest survey by the beach, and then wherever they find the nest, what they do is that they kind of scoop the entire area out, and then they shift it to a hatchery. And this hatchery is
Hmm.
fenced, like it's got a proper metallic fence and everything. And inside that, then the turtles would hatch, and then once they hatch, then the hatchlings are slowly sent to sea or released by the sea. So that is one of the options, that there's a hatchery, and there's a protected hatchery, and the composting can still go on that way.
No, that is definitely an option. That is definitely an option. I think the all of these things, unfortunately, I mean, I agree with all this, but unfortunately there is a element of money and economy, sorry, management that is involved in all of the solutions. Maybe there is a simpler one. Maybe there are some bio repellents or something like that, I would like to think. Because of course our country it is a very populated country, so getting that manpower is often not very um, difficult. But obviously, we're talking about Costa Rica, where the population is nowhere near, you know, the population of India, and of course, it is nowhere near. So yeah, that's the only problem I see. But other than that, I think yeah, it is a serious problem that needs to be addressed. I don't know if there is some kind of dogs that could be trained to watch over these pits or watch over these sites, the monitoring sites, with their muzzles and things like that, so they can't eat the turtles, the baby turtles or whatever. Um, yeah, but we'll follow the story, and if any update comes out, because it seems like a lot of people have identified this as a problem, and the locals also, I think, are trying to get involved in some way or the other.
But oops, I think with the dogs and everything, that seems to be a longer project because you will have to keep the dogs 24 hours. Around that, you will need more manpower. So the manpower that you're talking about would be used even more with dogs. So the better solution is either the walks in the night so that you can find the nests, you can move them to a safer spot, or you can somehow secure the compost bins. I think the
Mm,
securing the turtle nest would be better because if the way traditionally the compost is made, and raccoons get food from the compost, so that way it's a win-win situation. So in
yeah,
this
I
case,
mean,
I think if the turtle nests can somehow be protected, then that would be a better solution because that is what happens in other places. And even in Costa Rica, there are a lot of projects involving turtles. So hopefully, this
mm,
is one of their solutions.
mm.
But we'll keep you guys updated on the updates and if there is anything else that happens on the story front. But it's a great study, it's a great start, and we'll see what the government and what the local people do in the story.
Right, right. Um, we will next talk about Birutė Galdikas' life with orangutans, and um, this is a story in National Geographic that was done to mark her death. Um, she none of us, um, neither me nor Meghna, we weren't aware of her work. But as I read through the article and read through her achievements, it was quite prominent in the conservation world, and you know the documenting the life of orangutans in general. So I'll um, share my screen, and I'll just quickly read out the excerpt from the article. Um, Birutė Galdikas' life with orangutans and the iconic story that helped change their fate. Birutė Galdikas, a renowned primatologist and one of the trimates. By trimates, what they mean is Diane Fossey, Jane Goodall, and Birutė um, Galdikas, the three people who were working in um, primate conservation and research, and very effective at that. Um, Conducted groundbreaking long term research on orangutans in Borneo. Initially, observations confirmed that orangutans primarily lived in trees. However, Galdikas's research revealed a surprising discovery. Orangutans spend significant time on the ground and venture outside the rainforest. This realization came during a personal incident where, injured in the jungle, she witnessed an orangutan crossing a field. Over 4 years, Galdikas and her husband amassed over 5,000 hours observing orangutans, including rehabilitating captive orangutans for release back into the wild. Her work challenged existing understanding of orangutan behavior and social dynamics. So again, very important work done by her. We obviously, every time a researcher comes on our show, or even in general, we try to highlight the importance of research and the importance of discovering new species or things like that, discovering behaviors about existing species as well, so that we know what are the needs of the. We as humans know our needs very well, that we need these, this, and this, and this. Now, then we want to be want to know the, I guess, the width and breadth of what other animals need, because we might be unknowingly encroaching on some of their needs, um
Yeah.
because we just have no idea.
Yeah, plus I think one of the assumptions or the way that humans work is that we want to work with a lot of assumptions. Like we just assume what we don't know. So we're like, okay,
Mm,
we see orangutans in the tree a couple of times or most of the time, and then we just assume that okay, orangutans probably just live inside the forest on a tree because we've never spent that time doing that research. So this is where
mm,
research comes in because it breaks the notions and the myths of what we know. So and that observation is the only way to find out. So with Galdikas, her research was really important because if people were only taking the trees into account while saving orangutans, then they could even take the land into account. They could take the extra land that they were roaming around, so that would increase the periphery of the protection of the land.
right.
So this research is important that way, that we cannot just assume that if this is a species that we see commonly in the tree, that is the only place it exists
Mm. I'll share some photos. This is the cover story that was done in October 1975 in the National Geographic magazine. And Galdikas is pictured with some of the orphan orangutans, which probably was released back into the wild. So, very similar story as Jane Goodall. Um, you know, the being in the jungle, being amongst, and this takes dedication. Like, I have, at least for me, whenever I travel for photographing wildlife, especially, there is a point after which I'm like, okay, now maybe a month, maybe 1.5 months, after which I'm like, okay, now I need to go back home, sleep in my bed and do the things again, day to day, very normally. So it takes a lot of conviction, because we have grown up and developed in an urban environment. Often this is very foreign to us, some more than others, but it takes a lot of dedication to be in the forest, away from family for a long time. Again, this is a cute picture of a young orangutan, napping, um, nest made from an old dress, and hat that was swiped from Birutė. Yeah, so this is a great life's work, and National Geographic, in this story we are just celebrating her life, and through this show, um we send condolences to the family and celebrate her life, along with all the conservation world as well.
Yeah, and I think also with conservation and the conservation world that happens, like Oops mentioned, so we didn't know about Birute earlier. Uh, I'm not sure if I'm getting the pronunciation right or not. I'm just going by how the thing is. Is it Birute or Birute? I don't know.
Could be the.
Either way, it could be like a proper names that can be pronounced different ways. The only person who can tell you if it's right or wrong is the person whose name it is. But yeah, like with conservation, I think like it's probably like Jane Goodall was like Neil Armstrong. So like we get to know the first person who was out there in the field, and she was out there with the gorillas and uh, with the chimpanzees, and we know her research only because Jane Goodall talks about the chimps, and we've seen Jane Goodall's research everywhere. We've seen her institutes, seen all of that, But I think Birute or Birute, her life has not been covered as much, and her stories have not been covered as much. And this, I think, happens with conservation, that the first person who does something probably could be like they could overshadow other people, and that is probably why we never heard her name earlier.
Yeah, or we have been living under a rock. Either could be possible.
I
Um,
mean, for us both to be living under a rock would be very difficult, but probably some kind of rock. Probably not the
yes.
biggest rock, maybe some smaller rock. Yeah,
Um, cool. Um, great story, and celebrating the life. Always great to celebrate a life of a scientist who has contributed so much. Um, yeah.
yeah,
Unfortunately, her work may or may not be, um, being realized, or her work may or may not be completely being wiped out by the palm oil plantations and things like that. But um, nevertheless, it is a great legacy that she left behind.
absolutely. And we hope that she's inspired more young women to get into research, just like Jane Goodall,
Mm,
and work and not, like worry about being on the field. Um, And I think talking about actually palm oil, there is a story on palm oil that I would want to come to before we do the next story.
mm,
Um, it actually says the palm oil story. Okay, it says palm oil clearing advances in Bornean orangutan habitat despite red flags. This is also an article from Mongabay. It says Indonesian palm oil firm PT Equator Sumber Rezeki or ESR has rapidly deforested over 3,000 hectares within a UNESCO biosphere reserve in Borneo since January 2025. This is within a UNESCO um, biosphere reserve, which means that it has been protected. It has protection from UNESCO, and it is still being rapidly deforested. Deforested.
yeah, I mean,
Sat
UNESCO protection means it is not only protected at the local level, but it is of international importance. So all countries have agreed that this is a place of international importance.
Exactly. I mean, a UNESCO stamp is a really big stamp. I mean, even when
Mm.
it's given to these even the heritage sites are UNESCO, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so when the heritage sites are given, they're really protected, because the UNESCO has given that stamp. So it's weird that the government cannot see or cannot enforce the protection of this biosphere reserve. But going on, satellite analysis reveals a dramatic increase in clearing from under 200 hectares annually to 1,492 hectares between October and December 2025 alone. So 3 months it took them to raise 1,500 hectares. There was no one to see, there was no one to check, there was no one to stop. The concession
Mm.
overlaps a crucial wildlife corridor linking two parks, threatening habitat fragmentation and escalating human orangutan conflict. Despite
Mm.
acknowledging the habitat's presence, authorities propose voluntary conservation efforts instead of halting deforestation, sparking criticism from environmental groups. The cleared area resides within the Labian Leboyan watershed, a vital connection for the critically endangered Bornean orangutan. And these are
Mm.
the exact orangutans that Galdikas was trying to protect, and she had observed, and she had spent her entire life towards their protection, towards their survival. So it's really sad to see that. I think orangutans are one of the really, I would say, unlucky species. I mean, they're really cute and they get a lot of media coverage, and yet they don't get the kind of protection that other animals get, that have the same amount of media coverage.
Mm. Yeah, this is what we were talking about as well. Like, yeah, her life's work, contributing to that understanding of us, would mean nothing if we are not able to save, or to effectively contribute towards saving this beautiful species. So, as a tribute to her, it is our duty that we, you know, at least try, because this seems like going the opposite way. This seems like going the opposite way. It seems like going in the reverse direction, in the wrong direction, basically. So yeah, hopefully we can do that. And I think the money angle is always there. I always talk about the money angle. The money angle is there because I think we have to accept, for better or for worse, that humans are motivated primarily by money. And that's why these World Heritage sites are so important, because that means UNESCO provides the funding to manage these sites, and also sometimes maybe the expertise as well to manage these sites, primarily funding. But that might not be enough for these you know the people, the private interests that are sort of encroaching on the national park.
True. Plus, it's really strange for me that a government that knows that these Bornean orangutans are endemic species or indigenous species, and they would not be found anywhere else in the world, they still have this very casual attitude saying that let's just do voluntary conservation efforts instead of halting the deforestation, because we cannot halt the deforestation, so let's just bring some volunteers and be like, oh, let's try to save the orangutans, even if its habitat is being fragmented, even if there's like a like there's a proper two parts of the same part, and even the watershed that is critical for their survival, even if that goes to if it goes away just because this palm oil company needs to raise
Mm.
dam, they're okay with that, which
Mm.
is really sad, because like developing countries really only have only want to really become developed, and they only see the growth pattern, but they don't see what they're losing out in terms of their forests, especially like the orangutan that is really out there in the media, and people want to save it, and people have seen so many documentaries, so many movies about it.
Mm. Yeah.
You remember
um
that one movie which was really famous when we were younger, where this little kid had an orangutan inside a hotel?
no, I don't think uh, I have seen that movie.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah, it's a really nice movie, and I think orangutans got really famous after that movie. And for anyone who didn't know what an orangutan looks like, let me just share my screen once to show you and refresh your memory. So that's an orangutan. It's not the prettiest picture. It seems to be either eating or shouting. But yeah, that's a picture of an orangutan. This is the picture of the village borders, the orangutan habitat. And you can see the deforestation happening right inside this habitat. So, this entire green marking area is the orangutan habitat, and at least half of it has been deforested, which is really sad to see. It's,
Mm.
yeah, that's just really sad. And This is also a picture of the palm oil concession that this company has had, and it's not gone in that area, it's gone everywhere outside as well, and into the protected area, and still deforested the areas.
This is
And this is one of the land change photos.
yeah, this is not good at all. Not good at all. um we want to be saving these species, and this is what we get um instead, right? um
Yep. And I mean, you can see in this collage of photos how quickly the deforestation is happening. So it's all green in the first picture, and then it's all brown at the end of it. And these are satellite images that have been taken and it's a time lapse, and this is the West Kalimantan um, forest, which a lot of people even come for tourism to see the orangutans. Um, it's just really sad that the government doesn't care about these orangutans at all. This is how one of the healthy forests would actually look like in that
Mm,
area. So it's lush, it's green, it's dense, it's perfect for orangutans and other animals that are living there.
yeah.
So this is just really sad that they cannot save the orangutans. This is a one of the orangutans photo.
Yeah. I think make we are making lesser and lesser effort towards these kinds of animals, and we are trying to move more towards these novel kinds of um, solutions, where one of the foremost seed banks, Monsanto, they are proposing that by another 50 years there will be, farmer less food. Any food that you eat will be grown in a lab, everything will be automated and everything like that. So food and these animals are the last link that connects us to the natural environment and, makes us human. And if you're losing that, then, there is just no, I don't see any point of us being on this planet and doing the things that we do. Speaking of
Absolutely.
the
Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of those technological, um, uh, you know, technological ways that we are wanting to change our planet in, this is once again time for Colossal Biosciences, who got famous for their Time magazine cover story of about dire wolves, is again in the news. So this news comes from Mongabe as well, where it says biotech startup Colossal Biosciences is creating a vast biovault to freeze and store the DNA of endangered species, aiming to create a genetic backup of Earth's biodiversity. This biobanking initiative seeks to preserve genetic material as a safeguard against extinction, offering potential future reforestation restoration efforts. However, experts caution against viewing this as a simple solution to complex ecological problem, right? The thing we were talking about. While preserving DNA is valuable, it does not address habitat loss or immediate threats facing wildlife. The focus remains on proactive conservation, with biobanking serving as a supplemental tool, not a replacement for protecting ecosystems and tackling causes of endangerment. It's a complex issue requiring cautious optimism. I think this is what I was getting at. Like Monsanto saying that, your food will be farmer free, we are cutting out the farmer, everything will be lab grown. And these sort of new emerging technologies and all these other, claims that these startups or technology companies are making is very lucrative for the investor for some reason. So they are investing in this rather than protecting and conserving the actual wildlife. They think, oh, that someone else will do. Let my legacy be that I helped build this bank, which you know, which maybe 100 years down the line is the thing that is saving everything. You know, that kind of a thing.
Yeah, and actually our discussion question is also around that. It says, can frozen DNA actually conserve wildlife, or is it a distraction from addressing the root causes of extinction? And it seems like a distraction because I mean, you have these animals alive right now, and instead of trying to protect them, trying to see that they're alive, you're like, okay, let's just have like a bank, like a seed bank. Let's just have a DNA bank, and whenever we need this animal, we'll just de-extinct them instead of trying to protect the animals that already exist. Like, we have this whole what do you say, I think it's like a very human tendency that, something that we don't have, then we would want to create that. Like, we want to be the creator for all of these things. So we, at this point of time, we don't really appreciate what we already have. But once it is extinct, we're like, oh my god, that was the last white rhino, or that was last, animal to survive. This animal's gotten extinct, or these mosquitoes have gotten extinct. And then we'd be like, oh, like let's now try to like somehow create them again and bring them back.
Yeah, that is exactly what colossal biosciences are trying to do. I think what they're trying to do is basically what they have managed to do is basically capture the interest of billionaire investors, basically. And I think there are some pretty big names behind colossal biosciences and the investments that they have been getting. So that they have been very successful in doing, selling this idea, selling this vision to billionaires and investors. So if that person who the leader, the CEO and the founder of colossal biosciences, that person seems to be a very good, you know, negotiator and very good presenter, orator, whatever you want to call it. And if only that person used that same capabilities for saving, and they might be like, okay, we would donate X amount, which would definitely be a percentage of the investment that they're getting, because they have they have started a company and they have employees and they have all these other things that they have to take care of first, and their research interest, whatever this is, biobank, and then they're saying woolly mammoth, then they're saying they're bringing back moas and then dire wolves and whatnot, all these crazy things, and they might be donating 1%, 2%, 3% of it to, you know, to conservation. Now that's not really, if that person used their skills of presenting and oration and all these other things in getting a substantial investment like a fundraiser for wildlife, then that would have been much more useful for the current wildlife. uh,
Yeah. Yeah, but I think oops, that's just not, what would you say? It doesn't cut it for the billionaires. I think, and it has
I
to be
think so.
something that's very novel. That's something someone else hasn't done. So I think it's all of those things, like, like let's go to the moon and build a settlement, or let's go to Mars on a one-way plane rocket kind of thing. So it's one of those same things that let's create a bio vault. I mean, it would be so amazing to have all of
Mm.
this DNA of endangered species and then keep it as a backup, because if you're going to go extinct, then we'll be using this biobank. But
Yeah,
we do not want to actually save the animal, go on the ground, put the money there. Like, billionaires are not interested in that. It's just not such, it doesn't have that pull that
yeah.
existing animals need your help.
Yes, I think that is it. Like the legacy, that they're always thinking about the legacy side of things, and how will I be remembered, kind of things. They're always worried about. We as humans are generally worried about that, what our legacy would be. But I think more than others, these billionaires are too concerned about their legacy and what they will leave behind. I think also um, donating to, I think seed banks are very important because food is such an integral part of our day to day that, you know, if food goes wrong, then everything else goes wrong. So seed banks are very, very important. And billionaires are trying to control that as well. Billionaires like Bill Gates, wanting to own all the seed of the world, um, and trying to grab land. So it's our attitude that we won't stop doing anything. We won't, you know, stop polluting. We won't stop encroaching on lands of wild animals. We would create these things, these fictional things, which would prop us up, and in the eyes of the masses maybe um present us as a visionary, and then rest of it can just go on the same way. Let WWF just tread along, or the grassroots, or even WWF is too big. The grassroots organizations that are actually working towards the conservation, people like Galdikas, people like Jane Goodall, um, who are actually working at the
And smaller
grassroots level.
NGOs. Yeah, smaller NGOs that are working.
Yes,
Like there are local
yes,
NGOs everywhere.
they are the
And
real people that are working on the field at the grassroots level.
true. Plus, I think oops, the difference between a seed bank and a DNA bank is just that there are seed banks even with the farmers right now. Like every farmer has their own seed bank. So this it's not a way of like trying to save this plant or this crop from extinction. That is where the difference is.
It
That
is no, it is the worldwide seed banks like Monsanto and Faber. They are basically there to protect us against if a disease occurs in a particular species of plants, then everything goes extinct in one generation, because plants can go extinct faster than animals because their life is cycle can be cut down short. So those seed banks exist because of that, so that we have a reference seed and we can maybe GMO it if it is crucial. For example, soy. Soy is so crucial for our economies and our food chain, that our supply chain, that if it goes wrong, then a lot of things will go wrong. So those seed kinds of seed banks exist so that we have a reference seed and we can immediately GMO it or do something with it so that that crop can be grown again, basically.
yeah. I mean, we have to just wait and watch, but I really, really hope that the billionaires who are investing into such kind of investments, if you have that much money, then consider putting that money into actually saving the species that already exist than trying to save them from the DNA strand later on.
Yeah, 100% agree. 101% agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So moving on to the next story, we're going to be obviously talking about the war and it's a backstory.
Hmm.
This one talks about the Russia war. It says a toxic punch. Um, fears Russia's war is pushing the Black Sea and its dolphins past tipping point. Russia's war in Ukraine is severely damaging the Black Sea ecosystem, with scientists unable to fully assess the extent of the harm due to the ongoing conflict. Biodiversity has drastically changed and some species appear to have vanished. Dolphin deaths have risen sharply since the 2022 invasion, with 125 carcasses recorded in the first year and 49 last year, often showing signs of poisoning. Beyond direct attacks on research vessels like the Boris Alexander, threats include oil spills, naval mines, and acoustic disturbance from military sonar, causing strandings and fatalities. The Black Sea's unique ecosystem is facing a potential tipping point with limited data collection hindering conservation efforts. And I think this is where it gets really really tricky, because war is a very human thing. Like we want to fight, we want to have all of these missiles, and we want to try to show our power on this other country. But the suffering always happens with people who are not involved in the war. Their displacement happens first, and then secondly the animals. So when there is either the sea that is connected or the land that is connected, that gets distressed similarly. And it's not just Russia's war, but even the current ongoing Iran war. There's talks of like black rain, because there's so much smoke and there's so much destruction happening from the bombardment, that even the rain that's falling is black in color, and it's called black rain. So the gases and the entire ecosystem become so poisonous that these dolphins are ingesting the poison, and everything else is also compromised. I mean, I think even the people who are living there are probably living a really not a healthy life. And
Mm.
this study is focusing on the Black Sea ecosystem. And sadly, because the war is still ongoing, and there was a time, I think this happens with like ongoing wars. So when the Russia-Ukraine war started, then we used to talk about it, and then a year later they were like, oh, it's been a year, so people stopped reading about the news, people stopped caring about people. Similarly happened in other places across the world. And And once you stop caring about the people itself, then there's no way that the wildlife and environment will actually take like some kind of place in your lives to think about.
Yeah, I think we would reach true peace or true enlightenment or true state of um, you know calling ourselves the supreme species. We would reach that state only when, before a war, the impact on the environment is the first thing that is considered, and that actually has the power to deter governments and parties from engaging or starting that war. Nobody takes took into account the dolphins and all the different things. The I can understand the patriotic interests and the country's interests. Every country thinks that their interests should be protected, and it must be protected in some level. But the effect to the environment is too much, and the environment and the ecosystem is fragile, very fragile as it is. So it's
Yeah, and
really a
and honestly,
lose
oops,
lose situation.
it is a lose-lose situation. And honestly, oops, I don't think any country actually even cares about the people before they're bombing that
No, I
space. I
mean,
mean, actually
yes.
thinking about the environment and the wildlife there is a long shot, because I mean, as humans we always prioritize humans above anything else, and in a war situation even the humans are not prioritized. Like, people don't care if there is a lot of civilian deaths and there's a lot of civilian casualties.
Hmm.
So at this point, the after effects, or let's say the not even the after effects, but like the consequences of a war is what is happening. And I don't think any country would actually look at what would happen later. Like, what would I be causing to the environment and wildlife? Nobody cares. If they really did, they wouldn't even start a war in the first place. I mean, this entire war that's ongoing right now, also I don't see the point of it. But I mean, we don't see the point of it because we are people from the conservation world. We care about nature, we care about coexisting. and
Hmm.
uh, and these wars just make it a really hard place for all wildlife, because they don't even know what's happening. At least the humans are aware of what's happening. These animals are just what would you say, like bycatch of the war situation.
Yeah, yeah, which is sad. Again, we don't have any power for influencing or even suggesting anything about any conflict ongoing or past. We just know that conflicts, I mean, while it is inevitable that conflicts will happen, but and like we have not reached at all, like Meghna was saying, like we have don't even care about the people, so caring about the environment is like tertiary. um but I think we would have reached true enlightenment, like Gautam Buddha said, that we would have reached that level of enlightenment when we actually are able to consider not only our fellow brothers and sisters, but also um, things like dolphins or the corals, the sea, the land, our earth, the mother earth.
Yeah. And honestly, yeah, this is one of those. We can talk about the impacts of war, but we don't know how to stop it. We don't know what we can do for the dolphins. We
Mm,
don't know what we can do for the conservationists who want to go in and study. We can't do anything than just feel sad that as a human race we would prioritize fighting with each other over saving the one planet that we know exists with human life.
yeah, I think there was a website I came across very recently. It's called the war in Iran ticker, and it basically tracks the spending of US taxpayer dollars. This is obviously I'm speaking to the citizens of America. Um, it basically tracks the taxpayer dollars that is being spent in the war, and there is a petition going where they are right. Everybody can choose to write to sign their names there, and send it to the United States government that you know this is our taxpayer dollars, so stop spending them too much. You know.
Yeah, but that really doesn't work that way.
I mean,
Um,
that is the only thing that we can do, that I know that people are doing. That is the only thing. It is a democracy after all. So, I mean, America is still a democracy. So that is the only thing, if you, for American citizens to do. But otherwise, there is no influence whatsoever that we can have on any kind of conflict, any kind of war.
hmm,
Hmm.
true.
Um,
Okay, what else
cool.
do we have?
Cool. I will talk about this quickly, like a shorter story. This is a story. Oh, where did it go? Um,
Yeah, we have too many short stories also.
oh yeah. Humans have been hanging out with dogs for longer than we thought. This is a story from National Geographic. And this basically says new genetic research published in Nature pushes back the timeline of dog domestication to over 14,000 years, significantly earlier than previously thought. Analyzing ancient canine remains from Europe, scientists confirmed that dogs were genetically distinct from wolves and closely associated with humans in the late Paleolithic era, before the advent of agriculture. So basically, probably dogs were, helping humans hunt, or, bring back the kills and things like that, fetch the kills, basically. This discovery solidifies dogs as humanity's earliest domesticated partner, fulfilling roles like hunting assistance, guarding, and ritual participation. While earlier archaeological finds showed canines buried with humans, genetic analysis is crucial for confirmation, as remains can be difficult to differentiate from wolves. Previous estimates place the oldest definitive dog around 10,900 years. So this pushes the limit by another 3,000 years, and which implies a longer evolutionary process. So again, I think a cool little piece of story. I always like evolution and similar kinds of stories. So I'll just quickly share my screen. Dogs have been, and we have talked about this before as well, right? Dogs have been dogs, cats. These are the sort of the only domesticated species that we as humans generally should keep as pets and things like that.
True, and it actually um, reconfirms or reaffirms the domestication process, and it pushes it by another 3,000 years, which means that dogs have been our companions and our best friends for probably longer. I wouldn't say they were best friends probably then. They were more like guard dogs, or I wouldn't even say they might be a pet in the starting. They might just be animals that were curious that would come, and then we wanted them for our protection. But it's amazing to see where from where we've come. Like, I mean, 14,000 years ago, obviously, probably they were just what would you say? There were still wolves, or probably had remnants of wolves, or very similar to wolves. And from there, all the crossbreeding that we've done, we have ended up with chihuahuas, and we've ended up with pugs that can't breathe. So, yeah, congratulations, humans. We have a lot of dogs, but we also have a lot of species with um, difficulties as well. But it's amazing how long these dogs have been with us.
Yes, it is. It is very, very cool. Nice piece, cool piece of research.
Yep.
Cool.
And I think it's time for us to call uh, our guest over. So let me just give you a quick introduction. Today, we are joined by Dr. Maria Loconsole, a researcher in comparative psychology and animal cognition at the Department of General Psychology at the University of Padua, Italy. She earned her PhD in psychological sciences at the same university and has worked internationally on the cognitive development and behavior of animals. Maria's work investigates how animals perceive, represent, and interact with their environment from the earliest stages of life, combining methods from ethology, comparative psychology, and quantitative analysis of animal behavior. Her research focuses primarily on domestic chickens, but also embraces other animal models such as corvids, dogs, and tortoises. A central theme of her work is understanding how cognitive processes develop and how early experience and innate predispositions interact to shape behavior. In her work, Maria is strongly committed to animal welfare and ethics as she aims to highlight the cognitive richness of species frequently involved with humans. In 2025, she was awarded an ERC Synergy Grant as part of the project FLAP, Fostering Learning and Adaptation Through Predictability, which explores how minds adapt to change in the surrounding environment from the earliest stages of life. And hi, Maria. Welcome to the show. We are really, really happy that you joined us. Thank you for taking the time to join us. And we always begin with this question. We always love to hear the journey of a researcher and how it has led you to this current research and the interest, especially the Bouba Kiki research. Can you please share what the journey has been for you?
Sure, thank you. To be fair, I started my academic career in psychology. So at first, I didn't know about the possibility and the incredible chance of study the animal mind. And during my bachelor, I had the luck to do my internship in the comparative cognition lab under the supervision of Professor Lucia Regolin. And she initiated me to this field of research. And I fell in love with the idea of the comparative approach because there you consider human as one of the many other species. You consider cognition as one of the traits that have been selected during evolution, and as such they might confer some advantage to the organism, might be a human being but also other species. And so the idea of confronting different animals, comparing them to see similarities and differences, to get deeper into the understanding of what that certain cognitive trait is for, fascinated me. And by studying baby chicks, which is one of the most relevant models in this lab, I could also see the beauty of working with the precocial species. So an animal that as soon as they come to the world, they are already prepared to interact with it. They have a fully developed visual system, a brain, motor system. So they must be somehow equipped to interact with the world. And the idea is that they can do that relying on some predispositions, rely on some innate tendencies to focus towards some stimuli or to respond to some situations. And that's how we ended up studying the Bouba Kiki effect. So the idea that we are prepared to create some associations between information from different sensory modality. And that's how everything began.
Very cool. I think this effect, the Kiki effect that you touched on, and that is the subject of the paper that we are discussing today. People are pretty familiar with it. I think I have used this as sort of explaining to my friends at parties and things like that many a times. But just for some of us that might not know about this concept, could you probably, explain what this effect is and how humans typically experience it?
Yes, sure. So, in fact, the effect comes from human psychology, and it's the idea that when you see a shape, like some weird shape, not identifiable, like a round something, like a blob, or a spiky something like a star-like shape, you are more likely to name the first one as a Bouba or a Maluma, and the spiky one as a Kiki or Takete or Takiti, and you have no clear reason in mind why you do that, but you have this feeling that round is Bouba and spiky is Kiki. And surprisingly enough, this idea, this gut feeling of spikiness and roundness is shared, and more than 80% of the adult population will say the same, will give the same response, that round is Bouba and spiky is Kiki. And then as the study goes, they extended the effect to different populations, different linguistic systems, different orthographic systems, and even pre-verbal infants, which means that the association at least emerges very early during development. There were some attempts to show the Bouba Kiki effect in non-human species. I can think of 2 studies on big apes, on primates, and in those cases, it was less clear whether these animals had the association or not. And with our studies, we kind of filled in this, we entered in this big research field of the Bouba Kiki effect, showing that in baby chicks, 1-day-old and 3-day-old chicks, which kind of points toward a more predisposed mechanism than some language-related system, because of course, baby chicks do not have a human-like language system.
And could you also briefly explain the there is, and your paper mentions this as well, like there is a connection of this humans experiencing this, or humans identifying these shapes as a Bouba or Kiki. There is a connection with the development of human language, and that is talked about in the scientific circles a lot as well. Could you briefly explain any theories behind that, like how those two could be connected?
Of course. So basically, you can imagine 2 big theories. One that is experience-based, so the idea that our babies are exposed to a huge amount of multimodal information. When you speak, when I say the word Bouba, my lips will go in a rounder kind of shape. When you say Kiki, they go in a spikier. Or if you see how you write the letters, they have round and spiky features. So by being exposed to that, you end up associating. Or on the other hand, you have theories that hypothesize a predisposition to that. So we come to the world with this innate idea of a Bouba-like sounds being more rounded and Kiki as more spiky. And because the effect was very solid and very widespread in human, it has been linked to language. The idea could be that it facilitates infants in creating a vocabulary, because you already have this predisposition into matching a sound to a meaning, and also to share a system with others. So the idea that you are pointing to a reference. When you say something, you mean also something. So this will act as the basis that scaffolds then the human language.
Right. Yeah, that is super interesting, and I think when we first came across your paper, that was sort of the thoughts that we were going through as well. And does the current research that you have, the published research and the work that you're doing, does that challenge the idea that this is something uniquely human, or does it expand on that idea? How does that fit into this discourse, would you say?
Well, I feel the evidence in baby chicks, so we are talking a different taxa, we are talking like a different animal, kind of confutes the idea that it is a purely human effect, and also that it is purely related to language. One possibility that I personally find quite compelling is that as vertebrates, at least, we share some mechanisms, very, very basic mechanisms that helps us when we interact with the world. So matching information from different sensory modalities could be one of that. And in that sense, the Bouba Kiki will be no more than one other example of these multimodal associations. Then it is possible that humans as a species co-opted these mechanisms and exploit this tendency to create associations in developing a language. But the basic mechanism itself cannot explain the full complexity of human language. Something else must play a role. And also the presence in other species, of course, calls for a more some ecological function of this mechanism. That could be, for example, associating or predicting most probable outcome. If you hear something, you expect to see something that is consistent with your prior.
Right. That is very interesting to think about that. And like particularly me, I'm very fascinated with this idea of how we came about. I think the existential question is one that every one of us asks from time to time. And so I think one of the other questions is, because you said that there has been studies or attempts to show this or prove this in other non-human primates. What was your reasoning or your lab's reasoning behind choosing, baby chicks for the study?
Baby chicks serve pretty well the scope of the study because of the fact that they are precocial. There are studies I mentioned on pre-verbal infants, but before you can test them, even if you test a 1 month old baby, they will have huge experience. Because of course our babies are highly stimulated, they interact with the caregiver, they are exposed to language itself, they're exposed to shapes, to sounds. So even that you cannot rule out their very fast learning rate. And same was with primates, they were adult animals with a lot of experience. So if we want to disentangle whether we are looking at a predisposition or whether the result of experience, we need an animal for which we can control the exact amount of experience they have. And with baby chicks, this was possible and it was ethically sustainable because they are precocial species, meaning that you don't have to wait long times. You can test them immediately after hatching, so within their natural life cycle. And you can control for the experience they have. So they will hatch in the lab and you can test them before they can see specific sounds or specific shapes or before they have the chance to associate them. And if they can still do it, then it is more likely, it is more plausible that you're looking at the predisposition. On the other hand, if they needed experience, which was not the case, then you can discuss the possible role of interaction with the environment, specific experiences or training or whatsoever.
That's quite interesting.
I just wanted to ask exactly how did the experimentation work? Like, so when you had a 1-day chick or a 3-day chick, what exactly was shown to them, or what did they hear, and how did they actually associate the shapes with the sound?
So to be fair, we first approached the experiment with 3-day-old chicks. So initially we had the chicks hatching in the lab and we reared them in little social groups for 2 days and a half. And then we trained them briefly. It was like a 10 to 15 minutes training where we showed them a shape that had both spiky and round edges. So the shape was not informative per se of spikiness or roundness. And they were trained to go behind such shape and they would get a little treat. They will get a little worm, which they really like. And once they learn that, so the rule is go behind the shape to get the food, we trick them and show them 2 shapes, one fully round and one fully spiky. So the rule that the animals had acquired is no longer tenable because go behind the shape doesn't work with two shapes, right? And this is because we wanted to create an uncertain situation to possibly prompt their predisposed behavior, their bias. Because if you don't know what to do, you kind of, let me anthropomorphize a little bit. You go with your gut and you see what's more likely to be correct. And when they see the two shapes, one fully round and one fully spiky, they also hear the sound for the first time. So during training, they did not have any auditory stimulation, they only had the visual. And now for the first time in their whole life, they hear a repetition of like Bouba, Bouba, or Kiki, Kiki. And we hypothesized that if they are looking for the most correct response, which they should be because they want the food, they will go to the round, they will perceive the round as possibly the correct one when the Bouba sound is played, and the spiky shape when the Kiki sound is played. And that's exactly what happened. But then we wanted to push that forward. We wanted to test 1-day-old chicks, so no experience at all, to take them as soon as they hatched. At that point, it was no longer possible to work with food because they were newborns and they were not motivated to food. But baby chicks, as they hatch, they are curious about the world and they explore the world a little bit and they like some objects. So what we did was to take the newborn chick and show them a little shape, again with both round and spiky edges. And the shape was on a monitor close to them. It will tilt a little bit, so it's interesting to the baby chick and they like to explore that object, and we led them for half an hour. And then we presented them the two alternatives. So on the one side, the fully round shape, on the other side, the fully spiky shape, paired with the sound again for the first time. And we hypothesized if they really like the shape and if they want to get close to it and explore it, they might prefer the congruency if they have the association. So they might prefer to go close to the round and explore the round when they hear Bouba, and go close to the spiky when they hear Kiki. So we measured how long they were willing to stay close and to explore the shape depending on the sound they heard. And that's exactly what they did. So they went close to the round when hearing the Bouba and close to the spiky shape when hearing the Kiki.
And
Wow.
you chose like very young chicks. Were there? You mentioned some of the working with them, some of the things that you had to keep in mind to present perfect or near perfect control conditions. Were there any other challenges working with young chicks that you did not anticipate, or that you had to solve at the time of experimentation, or did you account for most of the things?
I think we accounted for most of the things. It's the task was very simple because we wanted to give them the best possible chance to respond to the test. We had to modify the stimuli a little bit. So usually with humans, you use like normal plain black shapes. We painted them orangey for the chicks because we wanted to make sure that we would get their attention. So talking about predispositions, chicks have some color preference, for example, or we also make, as I mentioned, the shapes moving a little bit so that they were interesting for the baby chick. Because at first, when we decided to try the day-old chicks, we were a bit scared that they might not want to play with the shapes or pay attention to them, because they might have had other things to think about. But so I think the main challenge was to make sure that the animal would attend to the stimuli, and that's why we make sure that they were colorful and that they were in movement. But other than that, it was pretty straightforward because it was very, very simple task. We just wanted them to show us what they liked. We didn't have any extensive training. We didn't have any within group condition. We just let them do whatever they wanted. And that was how they expressed their preference.
That's great. Sorry, Meghna.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, why exactly did you choose particularly baby chicks, like not any other bird, but just baby chicks? Is it because they're more common, or they're easier to experiment with, or is there any reason specifically to go with baby chicks?
Well, that's true. Like most of birds are precocial, so we could have gone to a different species. I do have experience with cross-modal correspondences in chicks. So we know, for example, that they match spatial position and luminance, same as humans do. And also there is very, very large literature about baby chicks having analogous mechanism to our infants. For example, detecting biological motion or facial structure recognition. So chicks will, if you want to compare to humans, because we said at first that this was thought to be a uniquely human mechanism, we felt that having a model that is known to already share some cognitive mechanisms to humans and to also have similar cross-modal associations will be a great starting point.
Yeah, that's great. And I think this often gets not talked about enough. But what run me through what was going through your head, or what were you feeling more precisely, that the sort of the moment that sort of you saw the hypothesis slowly materializing, and you realizing that these chicks were actually doing what you thought they would do, and the hypothesis is proving to be correct. What was running through your head at that time?
So, when I was doing the experiment with 3-day-old chicks, so we actually trained them a little bit, and then we had to be there for changing the panel and putting the reward behind and that kind of stuff. We could actually see it, but in a sense, we were a bit more confident about it, because, as I mentioned, we did a space luminance experiment, so we kind of knew that they had some other cross-modal correspondences. We knew the model, so there we were very happy, but still it made sense to us. You know what I mean? But then with the 1-day-old chicks, the experiment was different, because they were with a monitor and they had to explore. So only after collecting the video, we gave the video to a blind scorer, to 2 blind scorers that went through the videos and coded the time. So we didn't know about the results until the very end of it. And we were very, very scared and very, very curious about what was going on with the chicks, because they were on their own with the screen, and then 2 blind scorers with no contact to us would go through the videos, and only at the end we would know the results. So that was a really, really exciting moment for us, when we felt like that we expected it, we wanted it. We had no reason to believe they wouldn't do that, but nonetheless, it was really, really exciting to see that on the data for the first time.
Yeah, and I have seen the video that goes with your paper a few times as well. And when the video started as well, the first time I saw it, I did not expect them to be so precise about matching the shapes with it, with the sort of the sounds. And it was pretty interesting for a completely outside person who's not in academia or in this process at all, to see I could imagine the excitement there as well.
Yeah. And I don't know
I
if
have
you
one
also see
question.
that. Oh, yeah, sorry.
Sorry, go on, Maria, go on. What you were saying?
Oh, no, I was just saying that if you see, because you mentioned the video, I think the video shows pretty well that when the chick is moving, they tilt their head, check the shape, and then they go behind. And I think that's pretty interesting behavior, because it's a bird and you don't expect them to show attention similar way we do. I really like that frame in the video when the chick checks and then goes behind.
Yeah, that is really cool to see.
Yeah. I actually wanted to know, like, where exactly, even with humans, why exactly did we choose like a Bouba for round, or a Kiki for spiky? Like, where did the origins of those words come from, and like, where did we come up with those words for association that now we're using with the chicks, so that we play those sounds?
Originally, the very, very first studies used the words maluma and takete. And since then, there have been plenty of reputations with different variations on the theme. I guess the most famous one was the study with Bouba and Kiki by Ramachandran and Hubbard. And I guess since then, these have been the most used words. But there is wide literature with different examples. With baby chicks, we use these two because it was a new research line. So we wanted to start from the very, very basis using the same, the most common, at least, sounds that had been used. And there is one research that we feel really resonates well with our study that showed that the sound shape that is produced when you pronounce Bouba and Kiki physically resembles the sound that is produced if you flicker an object and it rolls on a surface, depending on whether it's round or spiky. So physical properties of sounds are preserved, are maintained in the physical realm, so the object rolling, and in the sound that we produce when we speak. So possibly if we have to look for some rule embedded in nature, so some regularity in nature that might explain the effect, that is the most likely candidate.
And you mentioned non-human primates. I think all of our audience, me included, would be very interested because the popular discourse or the discourse that is served to all of us mostly is that how similar chimpanzees or gorillas are to us humans. So they are the closest relatives and all those kinds of discussions. Is there any, of course, this is not directly related to the paper, but is there any thinking or any hypotheses that why our closest primate relatives have seemingly not shown this, association or this, association to this effect?
Yes, we were very surprised when we read that they failed the test because, of course, as you mentioned, they are very close to us, phylogenetically speaking, and it is very odd to assume that the ability separated and then was preserved in birds and then reappeared in humans but skipped the chimpanzees. It was a very weird picture. I guess that at the end of the day, the experiment in the primates supports the idea of a predisposition because, as I mentioned, predispositions are useful as long as they're flexible. If you have a predisposition that is very rigid and you stick to the wrong answer, even if you have experience that contradicts the prior, there is no advantage in that. So it is good for predisposition to be flexible and accommodate experience. So one likely explanation is that because they were adult individuals and some of them had very good experience with language because they were language trained chimpanzees, some of them, they might have not relied on prior as much as tried to figure out a human-led rule. So they were possibly trying to please the experimenter or answer to a test that they that was based on some different rules that they had experienced before. So possibly they do have the association, but the experimental situation, the task did not allow for it to emerge, or the life of the individuals that were tested did not allow for the predisposition to show. I hypothesize that testing naive primates or primates, giving them the chance to express their predispositions or to make an educated guess, then the effect might show. It's very likely to show.
Yeah, and I think there is a very slim chance of that because of all the regulations around experimenting with primates and sort of other non-human primates. I think that experimentation might be some time away, that we are able to design an experiment in a way that we can experiment with wild or, as you said, naive primates again.
I guess maybe there will be a way to accommodate, like maybe not fully naive to experiments, but at least not to the rule of matching between multimodal sensory information. But I hope we will be able to see that study, because that will be the missing link, right?
Yes, yeah, I would be pretty excited to see that study as well. So you mentioned sort of experimenting with 3-day-old chicks who had some exposure to external stimuli, and then completely, almost newborn chicks as well. You touched on some of the behavioral differences, regarding being motivated by food versus not. Were there any other sort of differences or hesitations between the two, conditions, or not so much?
We try to keep the conditions as similar as possible between them. Of course, first of all, chicks are a precocial species, and just because of that, they have quite a fast growing rate. And also we work with that have been selected by humans for a fast grow rate. So it is very different to work with a day-old animal or a 3-day-old animal. And you can tell, for example, the kind of attention they give to external stimuli is very different. I am very skeptical about the possibility of actually train a day-old chick to go behind a panel, because they are newly hatched. The world is highly stimulated for them. I don't know how they would react to such a complex situation or such a complex rule for them as walk towards something, go behind, which is scary per se, because you don't know what's behind the panel, right? Could be a predator potentially. So I don't see how that would be feasible with the day-old chick. Maybe it is, but I would be very surprised. With 3-day-old chicks, we had more flexibility in terms of what we could ask them. So we could ask them to walk, we could ask them to go behind the panel, to make a clear preference, like clear choice, I want this and not that. With the baby chicks, with the old chicks, we gave them the chance to go to both sides. We had to keep the time shorter because they would sleep. So I guess accommodating the task was somehow challenging, and that's why we had to compromise on some aspects, to use shorter tests, to give them the chance to go both sides and then measure the preference they would have, rather than giving them a one chance. I go left or right, and then that's it, because we don't know how they would react to all these changes and movements in the arena.
Yeah, that is really interesting to hear about the process.
I had one question though, like, I mean, when we talk about chickens or we talk about chicks or any of the animals, we usually talk about them in a farm animal perspective, or we talk about them as food. Like, because when we think of chicken, or when usually humans think of chicken, they think about it as food. So through your study, did you ever see like a changing perspective of people who approached you and said that, oh my God, I didn't know chickens were so intelligent, or, we only associate them as food, but your study has shown that, oh, they're capable of so much more?
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much for this question. That's real. That's a fact. As I mentioned, we work with broiler chickens, which is even worse, because that's exactly the breed that we eat. And it's surprising to see people that interact with these animals and discover how complex their cognition could be. And there are studies that show that this kind of knowledge truly affects also animal welfare and how we perceive them and how we relate to them, from exploitation to actual a proper interaction, the way you would do to a pet, for example. So it is something that has been shown in science, and that I had the luck to witness myself in the lab, being with these animals and seeing that the way that we interact with them is the same that I would have with my cat or with my dog. And knowing about their cognition, I hope will actually inform not only the theoretical science, which I love, but also the applicative aspect and the welfare of these animals. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be really cool. Like, yeah. And that is one of the reasons why we do this show as well and talk with researchers, so that the science, the theoretical aspect can be communicated to as many people as possible. There you mentioned some sound symbolisms and the things that could be a predisposition in nature. Is there any theories on sort of how far this could go back? Is there any research on that? Again, not directly related to your paper, but sort of in the periphery subject area. Is there any research on that? Maybe a last common ancestor between mammals and birds or something like that? Because we're pretty far apart, birds and us humans.
Yeah. So if we are placing the Bouba Kiki within the big group of cross-modal correspondences, the idea is that this would be a well-preserved mechanism in the vertebrate brain, at least. And that's because, as I said, these predispositions help the individual interacting with the environment in the very first interaction. So maybe with the Bouba Kiki is not that immediate, but imagine you are in nature and you hear a sound, high pitch or low pitch, and we do match them with size. So low pitch stays for a small animal, large pitch is a large animal, just because, for example, of the vocal tract that constrains to a certain shape. So if you hear the sound, you can predict what's coming. And in the jungle, it's very important to know whether you are approaching a huge animal or a small animal, right? So because vertebrates shed these environment and the same environment, and they all have the same problem of knowing what's coming, it is very likely that these cross-modal associations are a feature of the vertebrate brain. And there are examples in reptiles as well, in tortoises, so in birds, in different mammalian species. So it's a very strong mechanism. It's at least vertebrates. I don't know about specific studies in invertebrates, but I know that there are some that tackle similar questions and show results that are in line with the idea of cross-modal correspondences. So another very cool study that I hope we will see is the cross-modal correspondences in invertebrates.
That's very cool. And you mentioned sort of the pitch of the sound coming affecting, and you also talked about sort of the shapes, the Bouba Kiki shapes being physically translatable to how they would interact with the physical world and things like that. Are there any other sort of environmental co-occurrences that might explain sort of the association, the Bouba Kiki effect and its association with nature?
There have been some studies that try, for example, to match the effect to specific linguistic patterns, for example, vowels or consonant sounds, because of course the K sound in Kiki is like it recruits some muscles or some movements of the mouth that are very different from those that you have in Bouba, which is a labial consonant, for example. There are different theories, but that is more on the embodied side of cognition because it refers to the human perspective. So these, for example, won't hold for birds. It is not a given that it is possible that the same mechanism is shared, but then something else also build up in our species. So we cannot exclude that also plays a role, but cannot explain the effect itself.
Okay. And would you say that these chickens use or connect sounds with shapes in their general day-to-day communication with each other? Is this something that you would have noticed with that, the experiment, that they have some kind of vocalization and they have some association with shapes in their day-to-day life?
Chickens do have a very complex repertoire of communicative calls. Baby chicks a bit less. So until they are like juvenile individuals, they have quite a limited repertoire of calls. They have pleasure calls and distress calls, and that's mainly it. And then they develop more of a sophisticated repertoire. So for that kind of study, you might want to look at adult individuals. There are some studies in, I want to say macaques, but I might be wrong, but some primate, where they show that they do use that kind of information. So for example, when they have to communicate about food sources, the pitch is informative of the amount or quality of food. So large food sources will have a lower pitch sound, and smaller food sources will have a higher pitch sound. So the correlation between size and pitch is preserved also with communicative intent, at least in primates. I don't know about any specific studies with chicks, but again, chickens do have very complex repertoire. They have referential calls, they have audience effects, so they have all of the milestones that you would expect that might lead to that effect.
Right. And you tested obviously two different ages of chicks, but did your study scope sort of cover any retesting of the chicks after a specific period of time? Were there any fading observed, fading of their ability to associate, do these associations with the Bouba Kiki effect or anything along those lines?
Yes, that's a great point. We are actually right now running a study on this line. We first of all want to replicate the effect, which I can say so far so good. But again, because the idea is that the experience must play a role. So we are talking predispositions, but of course they need to accommodate experience. We can also hypothesize that after repeated failure, the effect should fade. And we saw that in previous studies on cross-modal correspondences, where animal underwent a lot of unrewarded trials, and then eventually they would stop doing the association because that would be no longer tenable. So the environment is saying your predisposition doesn't apply here, and it is valuable for animal to be capable of trying something else. So abandoning the rule that is clearly not working and moving on to something else. We expect to observe that with the Bouba Kiki effect as well. So that's definitely something that would corroborate our hypothesis of the predisposition, and we are very curious about that. Yeah.
That's cool. And I think you touched on this at various points quite well. But why has this even if it doesn't persist towards adult life or with the changing environment, why do you think, in terms of the evolution of species, why do you think this sort of sound shape effect might have been so resilient in sort of the evolutionary chain? You mentioned some points like interacting with the environment or some other kinds of communications as well. Were there any other specific things that could have made this so resilient?
We don't exactly know, but definitely something must be in place because it's a very strong effect. It's very widespread. One possibility is that because it belongs to a broader set of predispositions, in terms of economy of the brain, of the neural system, rather than having a specialization for each association, is more likely that there is a general mechanism for associating, and the Bouba Kiki falls within the huge sets of associations in there. Another possibility could be that similar neural mechanisms are recruited. So we do know that there is activation of specific brain areas, for example, for intensity of the sound and visual quantity of the stimuli. So it could be that some similar circuits are recruited. There are different hypotheses, but there is no unique testing of the one so far. It might also be that it's all of them together. We don't know about that. That's also a possibility. They're not mutually exclusive.
Yeah, could be. That is so interesting to know as well, right? To think, to answer, get the answers to this question. And ultimately, I think comparative psychology is about that how did our abilities evolve, and trying to find that those correlations with other species. Has there been any communication with the sort of broader, maybe linguistics or cognitive science community after the publication of your research? Because to me, the first time I came across the research, I made the connection with, language development and evolution of language and all those different things, and that your paper mentions this as well. All those things, I made those connections. Has there been any interest from the linguistics or cognitive science community in your research?
Well, we suggest that the mechanism might be a basis onto which then other more unique to language mechanism have a role. So possibly we hypothesize an interaction between the two. We rule out the idea that the phenomenon is per se uniquely language, but then something must happen at a certain point, right? Otherwise you won't be able to explain human language. And I think it will be really interesting. In the team of the originally published paper, there is Professor Silvia Benavides Varela, and she works with human babies. So we already started from this multidisciplinary approach because we wanted to have the whole picture. We also wanted to have the contribution, the huge and brilliant contribution of someone that knows the human side of the story. So I guess that it will be a great research line. I think it will be a great project to actually work with someone from linguistics specifically, because of course they have not only the different tools and the different approach, but also the different theories that goes into human systems and human mechanisms. So I guess that will be the perfect comparative approach, right? Not only between the models, but also between the techniques and the theories. So that will be really, really nice to do.
Right.
I also wanted to ask you, like, in general, I think humans feel like language and speech is something that's very human. Like, when we talk about animals, we're like, oh, they don't talk, or we're there to advocate for animals that cannot speak for themselves. So we usually have language associated with humans. So when your research came out with the chicks, did it cause any ripples in the general community or with general humans saying that, oh, we didn't know it was not just us, but other animals also that communicate using the same words or same sounds?
Yeah, I guess that's the idea in comparative cognition, that every species that is nowadays alive reached a level of complexity sufficient for them for fulfilling their purposes, right? And it is possible that humans, us as a species, we develop such a sophisticated language as one of the many alternatives to cope with the challenges that we have in our environment. I do agree that language is somehow unique to humans, but not because it's better or of a higher degree. It's just the one strategy that we adopted. Other animals might have different systems that are sufficient for them, so they might have invested in different cognitive or behavioral strategies. You can find similarities though. I was talking before about chickens. For example, I think a very great study is the one showing audience effect in chickens, which is something that we do when we speak. For example, we modulate the way we speak, the tone, the words we choose depending on the audience, so who we are talking to. And chickens do something similar. For example, if they have to make a call, the rooster has to make a call, they modulate it depending on how many chickens, how far from them they are. So they do have, they take the other into consideration when they communicate. So there are some instances that show that animals have a very sophisticated communicative system, but of course it does not rely on language and doesn't have all the features of our language. But that's just a strategy as many others, I guess. That's my personal position.
Right. And you mentioned sort of the next steps briefly around studying more, older specimens. What, along with that, are the sort of next steps for this particular line of research? Or how would you see this research taken forward, even if you are not involved with the directly with it?
Of course, we are very interested in the topic and very excited about these results, and we would love to see many directions of that. As I mentioned, I would love to see something that puts together the comparative perspective and the human-like approach, so linguistic, for example. I would also love to see different model species as invertebrates, because I guess these will inform us about how widespread and how truly universal the effect might be, or whether it emerged in a different point, for example, in the vertebrate brain. And I'm about to start a project on the effect of interaction with the environment on learning. So I would be really curious about knowing how specific experiences modulate the effect. Because of course the effect is not yes or no. It's an association and has different shades to it. So it will be really interesting to see whether different individuals that had different experiences, both in terms of value of the experience or the amount of information that they get out of the experience, how these would modulate the effect, if it would.
Yeah, that would be so cool to understand as well. Especially as you mentioned, sort of working with linguists and sort of the broader implications on human language, etc. Sorry, Meghna, go ahead.
Yeah.
No. I just wanted to ask you, so like next steps in this research, and then what are some of the future projects or other projects that are in the pipeline for you, or something that you're looking forward to in the future to work on?
As I was saying, we are now in the middle of replicating the effect and see how stable it is over time. And I guess that's a very important first step to know how strong the effect is and how tenable it is over experience and over time. And then we have different ideas. Of course, when you work with animals, you also have to face the constraints of time. As I was saying, you cannot ask the animal to work the same way you would ask to an adult human. And also you have to find a way to make a clear question to them. You cannot just put them in front of a keyboard and ask them to press the key when they hear Bouba Kiki. So I guess for me, one very exciting part of the process is to think about the task, to think about how to make it clear to the animal and how to make it neat and control for other variables. So now what I would really like to do is to develop a different task that can help us go deeper into the effect. So not only replicate it, but also try to see which mechanisms are involved or what kind of information the animal really needs in order to express the effect. That's something that really puzzles me, and really, I really like to be part of that process.
Oh, that would be so cool. Again, as I said, like it is very interesting in terms of like um evolution of language, evolution of our language as a whole, and if we can get clues from other species to contribute to that understanding, I think that would be great. But also, I think the point you mentioned around seeing, and Meghna also highlighted, seeing different species in a completely new light or a different light, right? Not only thinking of them as food or something that we just use when we need to, but also seeing them as individuals as well.
Yep. I think
Yeah,
I mean it was just
I really
amazing
like this. Yeah.
to.
Sorry, Maria, go ahead.
Sorry, please go ahead.
No. Go for it. I was just saying yes. For me, that's a key point, and I really hope, and I try to devote part of the time here also to the outreach and to communicate these results, because I truly believe that knowing more about the animals can also help us to understand their value as individuals and as other living beings, and not just a resource that we can exploit.
Hmm.
Yes, and I think that is a really beautiful thing, because most people just look at these farm animals as commodities. So it's beautiful that your research brings that their intelligence, and people are able to, you know, associate more of that animal with an intelligent species and just food. So I mean, thank you for your research, thank you for your time, and thank you for explaining everything so patiently to us. It was amazing to hear that, like baby chicks as old as just 1 day are capable of so much that even human babies are capable of. So it was just like really nice to hear all of that. So thank you so much for coming on the show, giving us your time, and explaining everything.
Thank you for having me. It was a real pleasure. I'm always happy to talk about this research. So thank you again.
Thanks. Have a good one, Maria.
Bye.
Thank you. Our producer will
Thank
just see
you.
you shortly, and yeah. Um, and that was amazing. I mean, we obviously knew about language and its dependency in our day-to-day life, and I think this is something that I've spoken with a lot of people. I usually say that we think that we're the only one talking. Every animal has its own language. It's just that their language is not same to our language, so we keep calling animals either what do you say? We just say that they can't speak, but they do speak. They
Mhm.
do communicate. They have their own ways of communicating, not just between themselves, but with us as well. You just need to be more patient with animals. And
I
because,
think the
yeah,
the point she mentioned around like I think that reframed my the way I think about things as well. At language, like complex language, while it is uniquely human, is the strategy we chose to cope with our surroundings. And other species might have chosen a different strategy that is enough for them.
yep,
Because of our bigger brains, because of our more complex brains, we chose this strategy, of a more complex strategy. But a chicken might not need this complex a mechanism to interact and cope with the surroundings.
true. But it just is just nice that it highlights the intelligence, because I think. Especially with chickens or other farm animals, like we've spoken about earlier, about pigs and cows and other animals which have shown tool use, or which have shown intelligence of a 3 year
Mm.
old kid. And there have been so many studies. So I hope that people's perspective changes, and they're more aware of what is on their plate, and there's more respect and there's more change. Like, obviously, with the changing environment and with climate change, obviously diet change is also something that really helps with climate change and global warming. But since we're drawing to a close, it's one of those things where it's time for my message in drawing the episode to a close. Um, when did you know about this research? What do you think when you think of the words Bouba and Kiki? Are you one of the exceptions? Like, because she said 80% of adults would think of Bouba as a roundish shape and Kiki as a spiky shape. Was it the same for you? And did it also blow your mind to know that chickens as old as just one day, like one day, and the precocial, which means that when they're born, and this is where basically she was talking. So precocial is that you're born with your eyes open, that you're ready to like move around in a couple of hours and you understand the world and you're out there and kicking, which is crazy because it doesn't happen with us humans. We take a long time. But did it blow your mind? Does it change your perception towards chickens? Does it change what is on your plate? Just let us know in the comments what you thought about this entire episode, and especially about chickens and their intelligence.
Right. And as always, subscribe to our channel and follow us on all the different social media platforms. We are on all the major social media platforms. You'll be able to find links to them in the description of whichever platform you're watching this on. And also tell us, like, what do you think about the research segment? We learn literally so much, and I love interacting with scientists in general. Such a repository of knowledge as well, and sort of exposing yourself to different kinds of research and things like that. We try to keep widespread. If there is someone you would like us to bring on, we would definitely let us know, and we would try and bring them on as well. If you're listening to this episode on one of the podcasting platforms, do consider giving us a review, leaving a review. It just helps with the reach. Just helps to get the uh, this sort of discussion out to many more people, and share this with someone that shares your views, or someone that doesn't share your view. Just expose them to a new viewpoint, new line of discussion, new line of discourse. And other than that, that's it for today, and we will see you next Sunday, same time, same channel. Have a good one, guys.
Bye bye.